Aquarius. Welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for June of 2022. We are the astrologers of Pandora Astrology. I'm Jamie Kale Miller. I'm in Berkeley, California.
And I'm Julia Mijas in Pioneer, California.
Well, Aquarius, this month's themes revolve a lot around your self-discipline, your personal creativity, and your ability to communicate. If you need clarification about anything Julia and I say here, you can find out more in a natal and transit reading, and there's a link for that in the YouTube description below. Well, I want to begin with some slower moving planets, actually, and just talk about some stuff that's been going on in the background for you over the course of years. Starting with Saturn. Saturn is in your own sign of Aquarius, and whether it's your sun that's in Aquarius or your rising, either way, this has had a big impact on you or will. When Saturn passes through the first house, it really impacts your identity and your boundaries and makes you just want to be more professional, want to present yourself with more maturity, have more gravity in your personality, and to really put your best foot forward at work. So you may find that as Saturn passes through this house, which usually takes about 2.5 years. And we don't know right now, without looking at your personal chart in detail, exactly when this started and when it finishes. But suffice it to say that if you have been feeling a lot of pressure to perform your best at work, and that pressure has felt like it's going on for a while, you know, like more than a year, this is probably why. The other planet I want to tell you about is Neptune, which moves even more slowly than Saturn. It spends more than a decade per house, and it's passing through the second house. And again, without looking at your specific chart, we don't know exactly when it started and when it finishes, but suffice it to say, this is a long-term era of redreaming your finances. And I think it's really, really important that you stay grounded and definitely stay practical during a transit like this one, because over the lengthy time period that Neptune is here, you may find yourself, you know, kind of at the other end of an offer of some financial scheme that might just be pie in the sky. And so it's important to stay grounded and think about your finances carefully, because you're in a mode of dreaming and visioning how great your finances could be. And it's really important to, you know, to utilize that in a good way. Another piece about Neptune in the second house is that this is a house of values. And wherever Neptune is, it is drawing you into greater alignment with your spiritual value system in that area. And so you may find that you want to spend your money on things and put your money towards things that will make the world a better place. And so while Neptune is passing through this house, you might find yourself interested in charity, for example. Okay, so one last thing I want to throw at you before I turn this over to Julia, which is that Jupiter, this little guy right here, has moved into your third house, has moved into the sign of Aries. And I talked about this a lot in last month's horoscope in May, so I won't belabor it a lot now, except to say that this is a really great year for learning for you to be very curious, to expand your mind, and take in a whole lot more new ideas. And if you are in, you know, a learning environment, such as you're going to school in some form or need to learn something this year, that is going to be really benefited. You can find out more about it in last month's horoscope for May. Hey, Julia, what's up with Mercury, Venus, and Mars for the Aquarians of the world right now?
Well, I've got some good news for you, Aquarius. Mercury is finally going direct very early in the month on the 3rd. And we covered this Mercury retrograde cycle in a lot of depth in last month's video. So if you really want to hear about it and how it's affected you, I totally recommend you to look at our last month. However, Mercury has been retrograde in your 4th house. This is the house of family and home. It also represents your past. And Mercury is the planet of communication communication and mentation. Whenever any planet goes retrograde, it's a time of sort of review and redoing of whatever that planet signifies. So with Mercury, Mercury retrogrades are kind of famous for lots of miscommunications. They can bring on technological issues, but specifically in your fourth house, you could have miscommunications with family members or the people that you live with. You could be sort of, maybe you have to review your living situation in some way. Something that you thought was settled might need a little bit more review at this time. And since the fourth house rules the past, you could be rethinking things that happened a very, very long time ago. But the good news is by the 3rd of the month, so pretty early on, Mercury's going to go direct. And then on the 13th, it's going to enter your 5th house. The 5th house is a very performative, very expressive house. And when Mercury, which represents your voice, goes in the 5th, it's a wonderful time for especially anything, if you do any type of performance in which you use your mind or your voice, that could be a wonderful, what's the word I'm looking for, use of this transit. Mercury is also a game-loving planet, and the 5th house represents fun and games. It's actually the funnest house in the zodiac. So when Mercury enters the 5th, your mind might be preoccupied with more fun stuff, or maybe if there are any games that you like playing in your life, you could get a big mental boost to how you play those games. And the 5th also represents children. So this could be a time of increased communication with your children as well. And other good news is that Venus, the planet of love and beauty, starts the month in your 4th house of family and home. So it's a wonderful, wonderful month. It's going to be there for the first 3 weeks to really get along well with your family members, especially if you have been having a lot of miscommunications with Mercury retrograde in there. So it's a good time for smoothing out things with your family members, getting along well with the people you live with, doing something to make your home more beautiful and satisfying because Venus represents beauty. Then by June 22nd, Venus is going to enter the 5th. And the 5th, I've already said a few things about the 5th, but it's also the house of dating. So by the end of the month, this is going to be a wonderful time for all the single Aquarians of the world to get out there and date. And if you're in a relationship, then you're going to have a lot of fun with your partner because Venus is the relationship planet and the 5th is the house of fun. Venus in the 5th can also be a really good time if you do anything creative, because Venus is the planet of beauty and the 5th house has a creative dimension to it. So if you like making things, crafting, designing stuff, great transit for that too. And I do have a few things to say about Mars, the planet of action and activity. Mars is a little bit more challenging than Venus. Mars, wherever Mars is, we can face some frustrations. Mars is associated with anger and conflict too. So Mars is going to spend the whole month in your 3rd house. That's the house of communication, siblings, neighborhood. So with Mars in the 3rd, it could be a time where you run into more conflict and disagreements with your siblings or maybe your neighbors. But Mars in the 3rd can be a really great transit if you need to go on a trip. Wherever we have Mars is where we have our sort of energy, where we have a lot of activity. So if you have a lot of fun trips sort of planned, or if you also have a lot of tasks and errands to do in your neighborhood, the 3rd house represents short trips. So like running around town, for example, this is a wonderful transit. Going for a jog in the park would be great for Mars in the 3rd. The 3rd house is also the house of communication. So you'll be a lot more direct with Mars in the 3rd. Just be careful not to be sort of like overly assertive with communication, because Mars in the 3rd can have a bit of a sharp tongue as well.
Yes, indeed. And there are a couple of moons I want to tell you about. The first one is the full moon in Sagittarius, which is happening in your 11th house, also your 5th house, because the sun is there opposing the moon. And this is an axis of self versus community. The sun is pulling for identity and self-expression and playfulness, while the moon here in the 11th house is pulling for being sensitive to, what people in your community, in your social groups, in your friend groups think of how you're doing, your behavior, your self-expression. So there's a sort of a feedback loop here between these two houses. This moon, we're calling it avoid delusion, head for intellectual solid ground. And we're calling it that because of the square to Neptune right here. Whenever Neptune gets involved, there can be this quality of being a little more fantasy oriented than reality grounded. And so we might have to work a little bit extra hard to keep our feet on the ground during a moon like this one. And so, I mean, I think what it comes down to for you is that you might have experience emotional outbursts with friends or by friends. And they might give you some reflection on yourself and how you've been behaving. Then the next moon, well, I want to talk about the seasonal change first, actually. The sun is going to leave Gemini. It's been in your 5th house, lighting up your creativity and self-expression zone, and is now moving on into the 6th house, lands there on the 21st. Wherever the sun goes, we want to shine the sunlight of our high quality attention, because wherever we do that, things can thrive and grow. In this case, as the sun moves into the 6th house, this is the arena of work, health, service, and personal organization. And so paying some high quality attention to these things can really improve your work life and how you occupy yourself. So as the sun moves into this house, and while it's here for about 30 days, starting June 21st, is a really great time to reorganize yourself, to maybe clean up your desk, clean up your computer desktop, get better at calendaring and managing the systems that help your life run both at home and at work. Then the last moon that I want to tell you about is happening on the 28th. This is the new moon in Cancer. New moons signifying, of course, new beginnings, the planting of seeds. This one is inviting you to plant seeds at work to help work go better. And also there's an involvement of Jupiter. Jupiter squares this moon, which might make this moon a little bit more bombastic. So beware of being overbearing or brash or overly blunt in a Jupiterian kind of way, especially because it's in Aries. So it's just a little bit more forceful than usual. So beware of that, bringing that energy into work and you know, just having it be a bit too much. And draw on the help of Vesta, which trines this moon and allows for compassion to provide containment, especially if somebody has become a little too big for their britches. You can find out more about this month's moons and also about the movements of Saturn and Neptune and Mercury in our on our YouTube channel in the June 2022 news playlist there. Also, the videos about that are up on our monthly forecast on our website, pandoraastrology.com, where you can check the readings tab to find out more about how to get a reading, or the classes tab as well. And until next time, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye-bye.
Bye.